So let's think about this for a moment. 15 trips abroad in a single year. That is a lot of time in airports, boardrooms, and hotel suites. And it's not just the plane tickets or the hotel rooms that matter, though those are already expensive. It's the cumulative costs of flights, accommodation, meals, allowances, security, and the entire entourage that accompanies a head of state. When you add all of that up, we're talking hundreds of millions of rand, if not more. To put that in perspective, the same money could fund dozens of new schools, hospitals, or social grant programs that directly impact the lives of ordinary South Africans. Every time the president boards a jet for diplomatic meetings, that is money leaving domestic priorities behind. And it's important to weigh that against the tangible benefits that these trips actually deliver. And that brings me to the next question. What is the real outcome of these trips? Ostensibly, these journeys are about diplomacy, trade, investment, and representing South Africa on the global stage. But when you look closer, you have to ask whether these visits are generating concrete gains. Have there been trade deals that materially boost local businesses? Have foreign investors committed funds that create jobs or improve infrastructure at home? Or are these trips largely symbolic, more about optics than measurable returns? Sometimes it feels like the headlines celebrate historic meetings or fruitful discussions, but the real question is whether there is follow through, whether promises translate into economic uplift for the people who actually pay for these missions. It's easy to travel the world in luxury, but the cost is real, and the benefits sometimes feel abstract. Security is another massive component that often goes unseen. Protecting a head of state abroad is not just a matter of a few bodyguards scattered here and there. It involves the South African Secret Service, coordination with local law enforcement, private contractors, and advanced logistics to keep the president safe at every step. That includes armored vehicles, advanced teams, and surveillance, all of which cost substantial sums. Taxpayers foot the bill for a level of protection that far exceeds what most citizens experience in their daily lives. And while security is undeniably important, it raises questions about proportionality. How much should the state spend on the president's safety versus bolstering domestic policing or social protection at home, especially when communities are facing rising crime and stretched resources? Now, if we zoom out, it's useful to compare these expenses internationally, looking at leaders of countries with similar GDPs, economies, or tax bases. We can start to see whether South Africa's spending on presidential travel is reasonable or excessive. Some nations manage to achieve global representation with far fewer trips or smaller entourages. Others spend extravagantly, but those countries may have larger budgets to absorb such costs. This comparison provides context. It allows us to judge whether our president's 15 trips this year alone are within the norms of responsible fiscal management or whether the country is carrying a disproportionate burden that ordinary citizens will never see the benefit of, a cost that instead could be applied to urgent domestic needs. We also have to think about the environmental footprint of all of these trips. Every international flight contributes to carbon emissions. And when you're talking about 15 trips abroad, often with private or first class flights, the cumulative impact is significant. It's not just the physical cost, there is a long term ecological cost that society bears. In a world facing climate crisis, one can reasonably ask whether some of these engagements could have been conducted virtually through maybe video conferences or phone calls or other remote diplomatic channels, saving both money and environmental impact. It's a balance between presence and practicality, and right now, the balance feels skewed towards spectacle rather than efficiency. Another angle worth exploring is the blurred line between official and personal costs. When the president travels, how much of the expense is strictly state funded versus covered by private hosts or international partners? Are we seeing fully transparent accounting that separates maybe personal perks from official duty, ordinary citizens have a right to know exactly how their money is being spent, and transparency in these high profile journeys is essential to maintaining public trust. Because when the public sees lavish accommodations, extravagant meals, or extended leisure time, questions naturally arise about accountability. Without full clarity, perception alone can erode confidence in leadership, especially in a country grappling with inequality and service delivery challenges, including corruption. Finally, and perhaps most importantly, there is the broader impact of this constant travel on governance and public perception. 15 trips means substantial time away from the country, which can delay domestic decision making, oversight, and engagement with urgent issues like employment, energy shortages, healthcare, crime, etc. There's also the question of prioritization. Which regions and countries are being visited, and what does that say about national priorities? And for ordinary South Africans, there is a growing frustration, a sense that while citizens struggle with daily challenges, the president is globetrotting in ways that feel disconnected from their realities. Public perception matters. Oversight, auditing, and parliamentary scrutiny of these trips should be robust enough to ensure that such spending aligns with public interest, the costs are justified, and that citizens see a tangible benefit from each journey abroad. So when you step back and think about it all, these 15 trips are more than just a sequence of flights and meetings. They are a lens into priorities, values, and governance. They touch on finances, outcomes, security, environmental impact, transparency, and public trust. There is the question of whether the state is serving its people first, or whether the optics of global diplomacy are overshadowing the domestic realities of a nation still struggling to meet the basic needs of its citizens. And as we discuss, debate, and reflect upon these issues, it becomes clear that the cost of travel is not just monetary. It's a mirror for society to examine what it truly values and whether leadership is aligned with those values.